Hey everyone, welcome back. I haven't been in front of the camera, I admit, for a while. Reasons being is because I've generally not been in the right place. I've tried to do my videos sort of on better days where possible, certainly the recipes I've been doing lately. But yeah, it's when you've got health issues, and certainly mine has not been the best at times. So I've kind of hidden behind the camera, but I'm coming in front of it at the moment. I'm not there yet with my sleep, for those that know me, but I am trying lots of different things. So yeah, I can only kind of do what I can do, but I do want to share something with you today, because this came into my awareness very recently, and I was kind of like, what? You know, I mean, for anyone that's heard of this out there, yeah, I'll be really interested to know, because this was very new to me, very new information. And I've been doing stuff on the health side now since my late 20s. I'm in my early 50s, for those that don't know. So yeah, it's been a bit of a long journey to kind of get here, and I'm not sure if this is the kind of final roll of the dice for me with my health, in getting things kind of on track. But I found it quite fascinating how I ended up here. So I'm going to share this with you because I do feel that it might actually help a lot of other people as well, especially people that have gone down a similar route to me, where they've tried lots of different things and they've had some successes, but maybe not, you know, enough to kind of cure or manage the condition that they have. So this is really to anyone with a chronic health condition, that may have had it for some time, and even if you've got a diagnosis, I think it would be worth looking into this, because this seems to tie in a lot, just from my own brief research that I've been doing recently, to a lot of underlying causes to health issues. It doesn't mean that it's the cause for everyone. I do think there are definitely variants out there, but it's certainly something that's been misunderstood and is still a little bit misunderstood. There's a lot of research being going into it, but it's still very much one of those where they don't have all the answers. They're kind of doing things as they go along and just doing the best that they can. But I'd like to share this with you, because like I said, it might help you or someone you know, and you might want to explore it a bit more. So before I do you like the scenery? I just felt like a little bit of sunshine, sea and sand. What better way to start the day? So yeah, hope you like. What is it about? Okay, has anyone ever heard of oxalates? That's spelled Oxalates. This was something new that I kind of discovered at the beginning of the year, through my nutritionist at the time. And I could have gone on the diet at the beginning of the year, but back then we were both exploring how to kind of really get my sleep back. And initially we took another route, because this route with the oxalates is not the easiest of routes. And it was kind of almost, let's leave that till last, because we really don't want to have to go there, and unless we have to. And I can understand why now. But that's not to put anybody off. It's quite a complex subject. So I'm only going to touch on it briefly today, because it is so deep on so many levels that I don't want to kind of scare people off. It's not about that, but there are a lot of people out there that have actually reversed their health conditions, and will be testimony to that, I'm sure. So without further ado, what is it? So oxalates are basically a microscopic type crystal, and they are in all plant foods. They're in supplements as well. Some supplements, it's very hard to avoid oxalates completely. There's only very few food products out there in supplements that only have trace amounts of oxalates, so it's hard to kind of avoid them. But you do have variants, and it's in the superfood industry, it's in the poor diet industry as well. So it's not just one particular type of food, it's across the board. So I just want to mention that before I mention a couple of foods, because people might feel that eating healthy is bad, and it's not. But I did have a bit of an eye-opener when I stepped into this, because all the foods that I was eating and have been for many years, I thought were actually really, really good for me. And on some level, they probably were for vitamins and minerals. But for the oxalate content, no, they're actually possibly causing more harm. So I'm going to share a couple of those with you. There are many foods out there that are high in oxalate. Again, I always ask people just to do their own research, purely because this is just my perspective, my experience, and I've only really touched the surface with this, and there's a lot of information out there. But I will share some good resources with you that have been shared with me, because I think it could be a real difficult one to try and understand what's real and what's not real from all the different information on the internet out there. There's a lot of misinformation because there's a lot of tests that have been done that weren't necessarily done in the right environment, or they weren't necessarily tested on all the different types of one food. Say, for example, strawberries, you've got lots of different types of strawberries. So you may have got an oxalate test done on one type of strawberry, but it might not be the same for all of them. Certain foods can vary dramatically depending on the brand, where they come from. And this is where the complex bit comes in. Also, how you prep food. If it's a grain, say, for example, oats could be high in oxalate, but if you soak them for a good 12 hours and then obviously rinse them, it actually takes away some of the oxalate, so you can actually still have oats. So there's different methods of removing some of those high oxalates in certain foods. Some you can't, that we're aware of, and there's the soluble and insoluble as well. So it's such a complex area that you could really get to the stage where you're micromanaging your food every day, and I certainly don't want to go down that road. I'm trying to do it in a sensible way, but just letting you know, for if you do want to kind of investigate this. So oxalates are from plant foods, and they're in supplements as well, and they're a microscopic type crystal, but it's like a little shard of glass in the body. So when it goes into the body, what happens is that will tear through the tissue if there is nothing there to remove it. Now, historically, and some people still have this, there is a bacteria, which I'm not going to try and name it just yet. I'll share it with you shortly, because it's a bit of a long word. But that is inherently is in humans, in their gut bacteria. And apparently, so there's an understanding that if you have antibiotics, it can kill off that particular bacteria along with other bacteria. Now, that bacteria apparently will not come back once it's destroyed. I believe there are scientists around the world that are looking into bringing this bacteria back for people that have had antibiotics, because I'm aware that there's a lot of people that have, me included. So some people will still have that bacteria active in their gut, so it may not actually affect them. And there's also those hereditary that have inherited this condition. So they may have been brought up with an oxalate issue and not maybe be aware of it. So let's talk about oxalate. So when it cuts into the tissue, so whether it be through the gut, so you're having a high oxalate food, it goes through your digestive system. When it gets to the gut and the high oxalate, then if you haven't got the right bacteria because it's been killed off and you haven't got the right bacteria in your gut, what's going to happen is it's going to cut through the tissues of the lining of your gut. Then it's going to go wherever it wants to around the body. Now, it's kind of been well known to get through to the brain barrier and into the pineal gland. For me personally, that resonates because I had what they call a brain virus in my late 20s, and it was feeding on sugar, but it was kind of more of a parasite issue. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this is because one of the things they found with oxalates is that parasites tend to hover around oxalates. So whether they feed on them or they're just drawn to them, we're not sure. But there certainly is a connection to parasites, fungal, anything like that, mold and oxalates, because they all kind of tend to group together. So it's no surprise that me having a high oxalate then had that obviously weakness with the parasite coming in into the brain and doing the damage. Anything like that to a certain degree can be undone and repaired. I always believe that, and there are methods, and this is what my nutritionist was doing at the start of the year. She was repairing the damage where certain brain chemicals were lower, and that was why I wasn't sleeping, and hence that's why she started with that predominantly. So we've been doing that, but because we didn't see an improvement in with sleep, that's when we kind of came to the conclusion that it was possibly an oxalate problem. I immediately went on the oxalate diet. I jumped in a little bit too quick, just to warn you, and it's you can get some quite severe symptoms come up, but because I'd been working with a nutritionist for 5 months and my body was in quite a good place through nutrition, health, I wasn't eating gluten, all the things that can kind of inflame your body, which oxalates do, by the way. They create inflammation in the body, so you want to kind of reduce the inflammation, because inflammation is disease. So I basically eventually came to the conclusion with my nutritionist's help that it was an oxalate issue for me. I'm still in the early stages of it, but as I say, I jumped in at the deep end and I saw very quickly some very severe, what they called oxalate dumping. Not the best expression, I know, but it's where the body starts to release the oxalates. When you're going on a lower diet, on an oxalate diet, your body then starts getting the trigger to release the oxalates that are stored in the body, whether it's in the bones, the tissues, and you get what's called oxalate dumping. And it can go on for months, years, depending on how long you have had these high oxalates in your foods over the years and supplements. So just to be mindful of that. But these oxalates can cause a lot of damage in the body, and they often are the underlying cause for a lot of health problems out there. I'm not saying they're the cause of everything, because they're not, but for some people they are. So it's certainly worth looking into. I just want to share with you just a couple of sources. This particular one, this group is an amazing group, actually. Right, I'm just going to share them with you. So this is their YouTube channel, and they're called The Wizards of Ox, Ox being short for oxalate. And this one of the ladies called Susan, she's a scientist. She actually set this community group up many years ago based on autism, because it was particularly, that was what she was looking into, and she found there was a lot of oxalate issues related to autism, and when they went on a low oxalate diet, then obviously some of the symptoms started reducing. So she set it up originally for autism, and then she realized it actually went further afield and it covers so many different health problems. And this is why I want to share this, because I really felt it was important to get this information out there for people that are suffering, that may want to look into this and do their own research and find their own journey, if they're willing to go down this route to get better. That's if you're trying everything else and you've not had any success. So let me just show you. So on this screen, I can't actually scroll down, unfortunately, at the moment, but on this screen, she's got lots of videos along with her team. There's a really good admin team of nutritionists, people that have basically been through the diet, are still doing the diet, and they've managed to reverse a lot of their health conditions, if not all of them. And they do share their stories. They have it's worth going on Facebook. There's the group actually on Facebook is called Trying Low Oxalates. I will put that in the description below, so for anyone that's interested, I'll also put the links in below, the ones I'm sharing. So Trying Low Oxalates it's a vastly growing group of people that have health problems that are trying oxalate diets. I actually come across this group through my nutritionalist, who recommended, I don't know if she's a nutritionist, but she's a health professional, and she healed herself and now has a fulfilling life and a very healthy life. But she was part of the group on Facebook, and that's basically, she then wrote her own books and she's done recipes, so to share the information. So my nutritionalist basically recommended her, and then when I got one of her books, which I'll show you in a moment, she recommended the Trying Low Oxalate group, which I absolutely highly recommend, because if you've got any questions, you've got any queries, you can just search in the group and you can guarantee most of the time somebody would have asked that question, and you will get lots of good feedback, not just from the community, from people that have had their own experiences, but from the admin team, and sometimes Susan as well. They'll dip in, and they have shared a lot of content and scientific information as well, because they're constantly doing research and they share that research within the group. It is a closed group, so you do need to request to join, because there's obviously a lot of information in there that they don't wish to kind of get out for different reasons, mainly because it's people's personal stories. So you do need to request to join, but it's worthwhile if you're going to do it. The last time I checked, it was over 77,000 members on there, so it is growing, and I think the more this information gets out there, the more it will help other people. So this YouTube channel is just another way you can go on. They do some videos and you can just have a quick look, see if it appeals to you, and if it's something you want to kind of look into more, then you can perhaps join the Facebook group. So the other thing I just want to share, I mentioned earlier, I will try and pronounce this, but it's called, the bacteria in the gut is called Oxalobacter formigenes, Oxalobacter formigenes. So it's one of the bacterias, that we naturally have in the gut. And it's apparently, once it's been destroyed, it's very hard to get back in, and that's what we are hoping science will come up with. It's possible somebody's already come up with it around the world, but it's just not brought to our attention. But certainly in the Trying Low Oxalate group, Susan, who set it up, is a scientist, and she's constantly staying on top of everything. And as far as we know at the moment, there isn't one that you can just put back in, but you can still take a prebiotic, and that will still help on some level. It's not going to kill off the oxalates or manage the oxalates. That's how we did historically. So there's that as an option. The other thing I just want to mention, I'm just going to stop sharing a moment. Okay, the other thing I just want to mention on that is there are a couple of things as well. Again, the Trying Low Oxalate group recommend taking enough calcium in your diet. Calcium will attach to oxalates, and magnesium citrate will push it out of the body. Some people are sensitive to citrate, so it might not work for you, but there are other options. Like I said, I highly recommend people joining the Facebook group that I mentioned earlier, because there's a lot of tips in there that people get around. There's so many different health problems that people have on there, and that not one thing fits all, so some people have to try other things. I personally use a little bit of extra calcium, especially if I'm not using calcium, say I'm not having yogurt or milk or something within my meal. But if you're having calcium with a meal, then that should target and hold on to the oxalates. So the other resource I just want to share, and this is the lady that was recommended to me. This is her book. I don't know if you can see it actually. Zoom in. It's called Data Companion, A Guide to Oxalate in Foods. And it's by Sally K. Norton. So this is the lady I was telling you about. She's done a recipe book, and she's got couple of books out. This particular book is really helpful, particularly if you're starting out and you want to have a guide, a list for the foods and their oxalate content. It also covers some supplements on here as a guide. You will have to look into some supplements yourself, but again, you can also use the Facebook group and ask what other people are using as a guide. A lot of people are in the States that are in the Facebook group, but there are some in the UK as well. But you can just search for alternatives if a product isn't available. There usually is an alternative out there. So I'm just going to share. I know you might not be able to see this properly. Just briefly, just one of the pages. So if I could zoom in, she basically lists the type of food, and it's broken down into the size, the portion size, the amount of oxalate, and whether it's high, extremely high, medium, low, whether it's trace, whether it's barely any oxalate in there. So the theory is that you aim for a low oxalate diet. Now, anyone starting out on this, because of the extreme dumping symptoms that you can experience, and you really don't want to put any more pressure on your kidneys. Anyone that has high oxalates issues tends to have some kidney related problems. Even if it's not flagged by the doctors, it might just be that it's at the early phases of it. But it's not to scare you, again, it's just to bring information that you can reverse those on some level. People have passed kidney stones through this process. You know, there's many ways to heal yourself, and this isn't only one way. I am still trying other ways as well, but for the majority of people on the Facebook page, they do a low oxalate diet. I'm doing the low to moderate. Some people will still incorporate some high, but just in moderation. You can buffer that with some calcium in the meal if you are having a little bit of high in the meal. But the key is to try and eliminate certainly the top end of the scale of the extremely high, the very high, and the high where possible. And low to moderate, I think, is probably a healthier way to go, because you don't want to cut out loads of foods that still have nutrients that are beneficial for you. So this is just a brief. I will talk about it a bit more in time. There's so much to this subject, but for anyone that would like to know, those are the 3 links that I've shared. I'm going to put them in the description below, and I'm also going to share some recipes coming up based on oxalates, so they will be predominantly low to moderate. So anyone that wants to go on this and wants to just go low, firstly, I advise you do very slowly if possible, because you don't want to create more symptoms that are going to create more problems for you, or you don't want to make your kidneys worse, because you know that for some could be quite detrimental. So you really got to go careful. They do recommend in the group that if you are starting the diet, that you reduce high oxalates by about 10 to 15%, so that you don't stop them completely. You reduce the amount you're having of that oxalate food. And I did say earlier, I'll give you some examples. Spinach is extremely high in oxalate. I was taking spinach by the handful every day for a good 8 years. Yeah, quite a long time. The recommended oxalate intake of what they say on average for an average person would be, I think it's something like 250 to 350 oxalates, 250 to 350 oxalates a day. Now, spinach, just to make you aware, a few leaves of spinach are in the thousands of oxalates. So that just kind of shows you how extreme some of the foods can be and how high an oxalate content they have. Beetroot's quite high in oxalates as well. Some berries, this is all obviously on the healthy side. There are things like chocolate, even like raw cacao is extremely high in oxalates. I was having a lot of that. So yeah, like I said, when I stopped 2 of those foods straight away without reducing them slowly over the weeks, I had really, really bad insomnia. Now my sleep is bad anyway, but I was taking stuff that was giving me about 3 hours a night at the time. I got nothing for 4 nights, nothing. And that is how it can kind of really push. I also had stomach pains, cramps. There was other symptoms coming out. And the thing with oxalate dumping is it's not, some similar symptoms are similar to detox, but it's not a detox. It is a process the body goes through periodically. It will release oxalates. It just does it naturally in the body. And when you suddenly stop, this is why some people, when they do these crash diets, suddenly get quite ill, because they're releasing oxalates without realizing it, particularly if you're going on an all meat diet or high protein and cutting out all the rest, because meat and protein, actually, believe it or not, is very low in oxalate, virtually none at all. So this diet, if you're vegan or vegetarian, it's not impossible. It's still very doable, but it is obviously a little bit harder because, you know, you've got to factor in, you know, that you're not going to be able to fill in the meals with those protein sources. So there's some examples on the foods. So if you're doing it, go slowly. They recommend in the group about up to 6 months before you reach the low oxalate diet. I've been doing this for about 6 weeks now. I've been reducing the very high oxalates, and they're all out of my diet now. And I'm down to low, moderate, and I have the occasional high food in there, but that's more to manage the oxalate dumping. So if you get an extreme oxalate dumping symptom, that just take something with a little bit of high oxalate, a small bit of chocolate, something that will help balance it so that your symptoms aren't so extreme. There are also things that you can do to buffer it, and those things, like I mentioned earlier, calcium citrate, magnesium citrate. Make sure you're taking an electrolyte of some kind, but again, check the ingredients and make sure there's not anything in there that's going to trigger more oxalate. So if it's got a high oxalate hidden binder or ingredient or something. Coconut water is a good source of electrolytes, that's natural. Also salt, you could make your own electrolyte water and add it to your drinking water. There's various ways of doing it. So just want to feed that out there. And the other thing I'll just want to mention is, if you're starting out on this, it might be worth getting some help from a nutritionist, from somebody that knows about oxalates, purely because it's such a complex area. And, you know, especially when you're starting out, you really need to get your feet in the right place and know what you're doing, so you to make your life more easier and more comfortable, basically. So I think that's all I'm going to share for now. I'll put the links, as I say, in the description below, and I'm going to share you some recipes, low to moderate, and those that want to adjust them, they can, feel free. I will explain the moderate food that I put in, purely because then it will give you the option to reduce that amount if you want to. Going back just briefly to Sally's book, the foods, as I say, she's got all of the foods in here that have been tested. Now, this is still not 100% accurate, and this is the problem with oxalates. A lot of the information that's been gathered over the years, there are, again, some anomalies. So Sally has reversed her condition and she's brought this book out. So I would say this book is one of the better guides. Also, the Try and Low Oxalate group, they have a spreadsheet in there and they're always updating it with tests. But again, everybody's different. You've got to work on what works for you. I hope this has been helpful, and I'd be really interested to know if anybody else has experienced this or come across this, because, like I said, this has really blown my brain this year on how it's possibly interconnected with so many different things, and certainly my own life. Anyway, lots of love to you all. Take care, and I will see you very soon.